Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Tax Administration Jamaica says leased Anoto Bay building should be occupied by third quarter. World Health Organization shelves plan for pandemic treaty. And later in sports, local footballer murdered in Denham Town. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. Tax Administration Jamaica TAJ says by the third quarter of this year, the leased property in Anoto Bay St. Mary should be occupied. Concerns had been raised following an investigation by the Auditor General, which revealed that the TAJ was spending $700,000 per month for the lease on the building. At this morning's sitting of the Public Accounts Committee meeting, Commissioner General at the TAJ, Ainsley Powell, said to date some $23 million has been spent on the lease alone. As for retrofitting the space,
we're going to start the process of putting the office in order for us to occupy, which is at a cost of estimated at roughly $30 million. The expected start date is June 10th for that work, and we expect it to be completed within 4 months. We'll be putting in counters for the service areas, and we'll be doing cabling, structured cabling to facilitate the IC network.
As for Mandeville, Mr. Powell says $451 million so far has been spent on leasing the building.
We started the bidding process and we expect that to be closed by the 29th of this month, which is tomorrow.
And the bidding process is for the retrofitting?
Right.
Okay. 29th
of May.
Of May, so yes. Tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
A fair amount of work on the contract was done by the landlord, and they had put in elevators, bathrooms, flooring, etc. But finishing the works is going to be our main response.
And what is the anticipated cost for the retrofitting of the space?
It will probably take us somewhere close to $1 billion.
To what?
$1 billion.
The Denham Town police are investigating the circumstances surrounding the murder of a man in Denham Town, Kingston. According to reports, the incident occurred about 5 this morning. The deceased has been identified as 40-year-old footballer Rafiek Thomas of 31 Water Street, Denham Town, Kingston 14. Now, it's understood that Mr. Thomas and another male who occupied the premises were asleep when armed men entered and opened fire at them. TVJ News understands that Mr. Thomas died on the spot while the other male was rushed to hospital. He's said to be in stable condition. Police Commissioner Dr. Kevin Blake is assuring members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force that issues surrounding clothing and equipment will be ironed out soon. His comment comes following concerns raised by the opposition spokesman on national security, Senator Peter Bunting, at the recent Police Federation conference.
Even whilst the resources are not forthcoming yet, we are committed to remove the friction, to fix our procurement, to fix our finance, to fix whatever, fix our logistics so that we can move faster in giving. We shouldn't be coming here and persons asking for bulletproof vests. It shouldn't be. But we have a budget for this year of $1.6 billion for uniform, and that includes 5,000 bulletproof vests. All right? I must say to you that one of the reasons why we have not gone much further with uniforms is that our uptake is much faster than the manufacturers can produce.
The World Health Organization, WHO, has had to shelve plans for a pandemic treaty after failing to get consensus on the terms from countries around the globe. The treaty contains set guidelines on how countries should respond in the event of a pandemic. Now, it was expected that the document would have been signed off at the WHO's annual meeting currently being held in Switzerland. When asked, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says Jamaica does not have a position on the pandemic treaty just yet.
The issue is, how do we get the world to sign on to a protocol that will allow us to respond to a global health risk like COVID-19 in a way that is efficient and that can neutralize that risk as quickly as possible. I want to say say clearly that Jamaica's position is very simple. We do not support giving up our sovereignty, and that's not what the pandemic treaty is about. I know some Jamaicans are concerned.
The pandemic agreement is being negotiated by the 194 member states of the WHO.
Of course, all countries are different, and countries must reserve the right to contextualize their response. Jamaica was able to use their primary healthcare system to do well in the pandemic, despite the tragic loss of life. Some countries don't have a primary healthcare system, and so their approach has to be different. But what is important is that the world recognizes that they have to share ideas, collaborate where necessary, in order to deal with the mitigating health risks that will challenge us from time to time.
A warning this afternoon to supporters of the People's National Party PNP to block out the noise of the Andrew Holness-led administration and work on getting them into power. Details in this report. Put your blinders on. That's the charge from Member of Parliament for Southwest Clarendon, Lothan Cousins. It comes as the political scene heats up for the much-anticipated general elections, constitutionally due in September next year. Speaking to constituents at the Tollgate Divisional Conference at the weekend, Mr. Cousins urged PNP supporters to focus on the task at hand, that is, to form the next government.
It's not everything that the Labour right themselves must dignify with a response. Sometimes them come with certain argument. It is to distract us from the overall objective. Yes. We need not focus on those issues that they discuss, especially if those issues are not issues that affect the legal and the constitutional provisions of Jamaica.
And again, the matter of the Privy Council continues to be a sore point.
Clinging to the Privy Council is denying every single Jamaican access to justice. And any government that denies the people access to justice is a wicked, cruel, and uncaring government who does not care about the people, who does not care about your rights, who do not care about the interests.
In the meantime, Mr. Cousins continues to bat for the PNP President Mark Golding, who has been under the microscope recently for his dual citizenship.
There's no denying that Mark Golding has his interest here in Jamaica and in the people of Jamaica. There's no denying that. He has exhibited that from day one. And I can guarantee you that when he becomes Prime Minister, when he becomes the next leader of Jamaica, that Jamaica will be a better place for it.
It's why he says he will be using his strong support base in Southwest Clarendon to help PNP candidates in and around Clarendon and the neighbouring parish of Manchester.
It is not easy to be a member of Parliament for an opposition party. We do a lot, yes, but we could have done more. And we're only going to be able to do more if our party is in power. Because when our party is in power, they are going to ensure that the constituency that stands with them is a constituency that they look out for more than any other constituency. Not true. It's raw politics.
And it's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is renewing calls for the countries like the United States to provide more support to developing countries like Jamaica to control the effects of climate change. He made that declaration on day one of the United Nations Small Island Developing States Conference in Antigua on Monday. According to Mr. Guterres, developed countries have been failing to cut greenhouse gas emissions, which is making it more difficult for poorer countries to combat the changing climate.
Today, we need your fierce voices more than ever. Calling out the G20 countries that failed to cut emissions of greenhouse gases, and G20 represents 80% of the emissions, and demanding that every country aligns its national climate plans with 1.5 degree limit, with credible timelines and policies to phase out fossil fuel production and consumption.
And while many people still question the signs supporting climate change, the UN Secretary General explained that small island states have all right to demand financial support from developed countries in the event there is a climate-related disaster.
Small island developing states have every right and reason to insist that developed economies fulfill their pledge to double adaptation finance by 2025. And we must hold them to this commitment as a bare minimum.
And it's now time for the Business Minute.
Jamaica spent 14.6% more on the importation of fuels and lubricants in 2023. For the calendar year, the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, Statin, says goods in this category were valued at $2.02 billion. For 2022, these imports were valued at $2.37 billion. Statin says imports in the group other fuels and lubricants also dropped by 9.7%. This amounted to $1.07 billion versus the $1.18 billion spent in 2022. Apple's smartphone shipments in China rose 52% in April from a year ago, extending a rebound seen in March. Data from the China Academy of Information and Communications Technology showed on Tuesday that shipments of foreign-branded phones in China rose to 3.495 million units from 2.301 million a year earlier. The jump follows a weak performance by the US tech giant in the world's biggest smartphone market earlier this year, amid intensifying competition in the high-end smartphone category from local rivals like Huawei. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Hal Shane Burke.
Time now for the top regional and international. And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Jermaine Brown will have your midday sports report.